Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. As we remember, that Justin Trudeau created the CEBA loan in order to help small businesses get around some of the troubles that were happening with the pandemic and to help keep those businesses afloat. Because of the CEBA loan now, some of those, or the repayment of the CEBA loan, should we say, that the small businesses are coming under fire again. They have to come up with the entire portion of the loan in order to avoid a high interest rate. And that deadline is approaching very fast. Different premiers and levels of government have been after the federal government to find out what they will do to help small businesses again as this deadline approaches. And it's not only going to it's affecting a lot of mom and pop shops. It's also going to affect some charities and other types of businesses that needed just to stay afloat during the pandemic in order they just needed the cash influx to keep afloat. So it's a big question what is going to happen with the CEBA loan repayment and what the federal government is going to do to help small businesses and charities that accepted this money to get around the high interest rates that is impending. Along with that, some of the other things that have happened politically, that we may have heard that Donald Trump won the state of Iowa. But here's the thing, right after that, he may have won the state of Iowa, but he is still facing charges and was back in court again right away after winning the state of Iowa. And most recently that he has been asked by the judge in that same case to, shall we say, politely, he was told to shut up. There's a lot of questions around Donald Trump's performance and some of the rhetoric that he is talking about. There have been social media rumors that he's talking about some sort of a dome over the United States. Now, whether he's talking about a dome or not isn't necessarily the thing at hand. It is the isolationism that he's talking about. If the United States is to isolate itself, what would happen to the American society? If they were to close off their borders That would also mean they would be closing off their borders to imported goods and a lot of other things that happen. So, what would happen to business? What would happen to commerce? And we have to ask ourselves the question, what would happen to the United States if Donald Trump's elected and he is allowed to instill a policy of isolationism? So we're going to hear also about Manitoba and Canada and a clean fuel program for aviation and a few other things. So why don't we start with Justin Trudeau as he announced he deals in St. John's.
I guess first question is, where's everybody
housing
yesterday?
And
must have a big guy in town.
Questions about
before I start,
CEBA
I certainly want to
and small business.
Do an acknowledgement that we are on traditional and ceded territory of the Wolastoqey, alongside of their neighbors, the Mi'kmaq and the Pescatawakati. Welcome, everybody. It's a big day for me personally. Welcome, Prime Minister, Mayor Reardon. I see Mayor Merrifield, Deputy Mayor McKenzie, councillors. It's a huge day for us in this city. And, you know, I am reflective. I started as an MP in 2015 because of this guy, because I believed in him. I believed in a government that can do good things for people. I believe that government with programs to help our most vulnerable is what we're there for. And I wanted to be an advocate for this riding. We've delivered federally over $1.3 billion to this riding. Since 2015, we've transformed this riding. And I'm just so proud to be your member of parliament. So without further ado, I certainly want to welcome our Prime Minister. Welcome back to this beautiful city, my beautiful riding, and over to you.
Thank you, Wayne, for your words, but thank you also for your extraordinary work for the people of St. John. It really is a pleasure to be able to do so much with you here over the past many years. Donna and Mayor Reardon, thank you so much for your welcome as well. Thank you for your leadership as we've come together with this announcement today. I want to thank the assembled councillors, Mayor Merrifield, other officials who are here. This is really about all of us coming together to respond to the challenges that communities and individuals are facing right across the country. I had the opportunity to sit down with April, one of the residents of this building, just earlier, and she talked about how challenging it was to find an affordable place to live, but also how much over the past months she's been able to develop her independence, her sense of building a strong future through having a safe and, quite frankly, excellent place to live that is also affordable, because that really matters. And this building we're in here today is a recipient of federal partnership through the Affordable Housing Fund that delivered this excellent building, along with the work that the mayor and the province did on this. Just last week, Wayne, you were here with the mayor as well for a rapid housing announcement over at Barracks Green that is showing what we can do, especially to help the most vulnerable. We know there's real challenges around homeless populations here in the city and across the country that we need to continue to step up on. And those are two different programs. And today we're here to announce a third program, a really big one. C'est le Fonds pour l'accélération de la construction de logements. C'est des accords qu'on signe avec maintenant 22 villes à travers le pays pour accélérer la construction de logements, pour faire plus de logements plus rapidement. C'est une question de réduire les barrières, accélérer les processus dans les villes, accroître la densification, travailler ensemble pour pas seulement faire des annonces comme celle-ci, mais pour livrer une nouvelle façon de bâtir des logements plus rapidement. We're here today for the 22nd Housing Accelerator Fund announcement across the country. We've worked very, very hard with the City of St. John to come to an ambitious proposal that's going to increase densification, that's going to accelerate the processes in terms of building more housing more quickly. They're looking at freeing up public land for housing. They're looking at all the different things that are going to not just make individual projects happen, but change the way all housing is built in this community and, by extension, right across the country. We signed the Housing Accelerator deals with cities that were willing to step up and be bold and ambitious about meeting the growth that Canadians want and need, both in population and in our economy, and that's exactly why I'm so happy to be here. It's about building a better country for everyone, in which people can have that building block and that pathway towards greater and greater success by having a secure and affordable place to live. We know that people are worried that the promise of Canada doesn't hold the way it used to. That promise that every generation should be able to succeed even better than the one before because of the work that we've done over generations and generations. People look at the challenges the world is facing right now and the challenges we're facing in our communities right across the country, and they're worried that maybe that idea and that promise of progress doesn't hold anymore. Well, that's why we're working so hard to secure that promise, to make the kind of investments that are going to create an even better country and even better opportunities for everyone. It's hard work, but the way it gets done is by rolling up our sleeves and doing it together. And that's why I'm so pleased to be here with the Mayor and the municipality on this one. There's other programs we've worked very closely with the province on, including, for example, accelerating the construction of apartment buildings. We've removed the GST on the federal side. We encourage New Brunswick to match what the other Atlantic provinces have done, and also remove the GST on the provincial side to make sure that the math works to build more and more rental homes, rental housing across the city, across the province, and indeed across the country. Beaucoup de travail encore à faire, mais on va être là pour le faire en partenariat, en travaillant pour bâtir un avenir meilleur. Canada is the best country in the world. We're going to keep working together to make it even better. Merci beaucoup. Happy now to pass it over to Mayor Reardon. Donna.
Prime Minister, it's an honor to be here with you today and with our MP Wayne Long for this announcement. We're a small city with a big heart, and so we have to be bold, and the Prime Minister spoke about that today. I have a few notes I would like to read because there are a lot of important details that the Housing Accelerator will help us with. It's a pivotal moment for St. John as we collaborate with the federal government on the Housing Accelerator Fund. This partnership is more than just a financial commitment, it's a promise to our residents. As a city, we're dedicated to accelerating the development of affordable housing, ensuring every member of our community has a place to call home, exactly what the Prime Minister said. This initiative is more than just building houses, it's about building a future. Together, we're laying the foundation for a stronger, more inclusive community where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Today's announcement of $9.18 million in funding from Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation through the Housing Accelerator Fund means 285 additional housing units will be created within our city over the next 3 years. It brings transformational and, most importantly, systemic change at the municipal level that will continue to move us forward in creating a community that is conducive to housing and focuses on addressing the housing challenges faced both here in St. John and throughout Canada. St. John's Housing Accelerator Fund plan includes incentives to help increase construction of apartments, townhouses, and secondary suites. It also includes incentives for the creation of affordable units, public land redevelopment, amendments to the zoning bylaw to permit additional density in key areas, introducing an electronic permitting system, and longer-term governance considerations. Today's announcement shows the Government of Canada recognizes that housing is the cornerstone of healthy, vibrant, and inclusive communities and the need for assisting municipalities in addressing local housing challenges. On behalf of St. John City Council and the residents of St. John, I thank you for supporting us today. Housing is considered by your federal government as a right. So this demonstrates that, I guess, you put your money where your mouth is. If you say housing is a right, they come to the table with $9.18 million for St. John. It's great news. And the other thing I'll say is, as a small city with a big heart, we have to be bold and we want to grow. And I'm going to use your father's line, and I'm going to say, just watch us. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you. We'll now turn over for questions. On va maintenant prendre les questions. All New Brunswick, please.
Hi, good morning. My question has to do with developers. With inflation and interest rates posing to be big challenges for developers to get projects off the ground, can you comment on what the federal government is doing to help developers actually build apartment buildings?
Well, actually, we've done a couple of really big things. We announced a increase to the loan programs from $40 billion to $60 billion to help with financing of construction, of the rental constructions. We've also, in taking the GST off of new apartment building constructions, it actually makes the math work that much better. We understand that the cost of labor, the cost of resources and materials is going up with inflation. We're working on bringing inflation down, and it's steadily been coming down over the past year. But we knew that we needed to be there to help make the math work for developers to actually build it. I know the city has programs as well to support the construction of particularly affordable and middle-income range rental housing. We're going to continue to be there to make sure that everyone is working together to build the kind of future we need for Canada.
Next question.
Bonjour, Sébastien Caron pour ces médias. On sait que la construction de logements a un autre problème aussi, c'est la main-d'œuvre. Comment on va faire pour avancer sur ce point-là?
À travers le pays, on fait face à une pénurie de main-d'œuvre, particulièrement dans nos systèmes de santé et dans la construction. C'est pour ça qu'on est en train de regarder comment on peut accélérer la certification de travailleurs et d'amener des gens qui vont pouvoir se mettre au boulot tout de suite pour bâtir des maisons pour la communauté. On sait que l'immigration fait partie de la solution. Il faut qu'on le fasse, continue de le faire de façon responsable, mais c'est exactement ce qu'on va continuer de faire.
Prochaine question.
Hi. I know the city's application was originally put for $14.5 million. I think the mayor say about $9.8 million is given. What went into determining how much each municipality received?
We put forward $4 billion a couple of years ago for the express purpose of making sure that cities were able to meet their own ambitions for growth, for opportunity for their citizens. There is a lot of hard work and a lot of partnership going into looking at what could actually be done, what is the right level of it. We came down with an agreement around $9.18 million for the Housing Accelerator Fund, which we feel is the right level to really enable St. John to accelerate, to get more homes built faster, to get people into those homes in an affordable way, and we're really pleased with that announcement.
Next question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. I wanted to ask about the CEBA program. Of course, the deadline is coming up tomorrow. What was the reasoning behind not extending that program, and is there any concerns about the impacts this could have on businesses who are still trying to recover from COVID?
We have consistently been there for small businesses across this country since we got elected, since 2015, where we lowered small business taxes. We've actually increased the capacity of small businesses to grow and still benefit from small business taxes. And during COVID, we knew we had to step up right away to support small businesses so people keep their doors open, keep their employees on the payroll. We stepped up with significant supports, including direct help to Canadians, but also direct help to small businesses with the CEBA loans. We understand that things, even as the economy has bounced back from COVID, continue to be challenging, which is why we extended twice the repayment deadline for the CEBA loans, but we are now far enough from the pandemic that we do have to wrap up pandemic programs. Businesses have a number of different options if they're facing challenges around the CEBA loans. One is obviously, as the majority of businesses have done, they can repay the CEBA loan by the 18th and benefit from the forgiveness that comes with that. If they can't quite make it by the 18th, There are plenty of financial institutions who are there to give low-cost loans to be able to benefit those businesses as they continue to repay it over the coming years. And if they don't want to engage with their financial institutions, they still have 3 years to repay the entire body of the loan. So there are many different options out there, and as a government, we're going to continue to be there and look for ways to encourage small businesses that are the backbone of our communities, the backbone of our economy. We will continue to be there for them in many different ways, but pandemic supports, we all know, had to end at one point.
Répétez en français, s'il vous plaît.
Bien sûr. Nous avons toujours été là pour les petites entreprises. On comprend à quel point les petites entreprises sont au cœur de, pas seulement nos communautés, mais notre économie à travers le pays. C'est pour ça que, quand la pandémie a frappé, on a agi rapidement pour permettre aux entreprises, particulièrement les petites entreprises, de continuer de passer à travers ces moments extrêmement difficiles. Avec la reprise économique, on est passé au-delà de la pandémie, mais on reconnaissait que les temps étaient quand même difficiles, particulièrement avec l'inflation qu'on a vue au cours des dernières années. C'est pour ça qu'on a fait 2 extensions déjà au programme de prêt CEBA. Maintenant, les entreprises ont différentes options. Ils peuvent repayer avant le 18, comme la majorité des petites entreprises ont pu faire depuis dans les dernières années. Ils peuvent aussi travailler avec leur institution financière pour refinancer ce prêt, pour bénéficier encore du retour qu'on est en train d'offrir. Mais ils peuvent aussi juste prendre 3 ans encore pour repayer à de taux d'intérêt extrêmement favorables par rapport à ce prêt-là. Alors, on va continuer de travailler avec les petites entreprises à travers le pays pour s'assurer qu'on continue de créer de la croissance et qu'on les aide de différentes façons, mais les soutiens COVID, il fallait qu'ils finissent à un moment donné et ce sera maintenant.
Prochaine question.
Oui. Marie-Ève Bégin, Radio-Canada, bonjour. Je demande pour CBC aussi, évidemment. Donc, concernant l'exemption sur la taxe carbone pour le chauffage au mazout ici en Atlantique, ça a permis de calmer une certaine grogne au sein de votre caucus ici en Atlantique. Est-ce que vous sentez, depuis l'annonce, que sur le terrain, ça a aidé à gagner en popularité pour vous au sein des citoyens de l'Atlantique?
Mais c'était jamais une question de popularité, c'était une question de répondre aux besoins réels auxquels les gens faisaient face avec les prix volatiles au niveau de l'énergie, avec l'inflation que les gens étaient en train de vivre. On a compris que des gens, pas seulement dans les provinces de l'Atlantique, mais à travers le pays, souffraient à cause du coût de l'huile de chauffage, à cause de la volatilité des prix internationaux là-dessus, et aussi parce que l'huile de chauffage, c'est plus polluant que d'autres façons de chauffer sa maison. C'est pour ça qu'on a eu comme but d'essayer de passer au-delà de l'huile de chauffage. Et la simple prise sur la pollution n'était pas tout à fait l'outil adéquat pour encourager et pour aider les gens à faire cette transition. Donc, on a choisi de mettre une pause sur le prix sur la pollution sur ce produit exact, sur l'huile de chauffage, pour pouvoir encourager des gens à travers le pays d'en finir avec l'huile de chauffage, d'installer des thermopompes électriques. C'est pour ça qu'on est en train de travailler, justement, avec les provinces de l'Atlantique, mais avec d'autres provinces à travers le pays, pour bonifier le programme, pour que les gens à faible revenu puissent installer un thermopompe électrique à aucun coût pour les aider à plus être dépendants de l'huile de chauffage qui est plus chère et plus polluant. C'est un programme, effectivement, qui aide beaucoup dans les provinces de l'Atlantique, mais à travers le pays, il y a énormément de gens qui dépendent encore de l'huile de chauffage et c'est souvent des gens plus vulnérables. C'est pour ça qu'on est là pour aider sur le terrain et je pense que les gens comprennent à quel point c'est important, oui, de lutter contre les changements climatiques, mais d'assurer l'abordabilité et le bien-être des familles pendant qu'on fait cette transition.
J'aurais une autre petite question concernant le temps des fêtes et vos vacances en Jamaïque. On sait que vous avez reçu l'aval du commissaire à l'éthique, mais au-delà de ça, est-ce que vous pensez que c'est un cadeau qui pourrait être mal perçu par les citoyens qui se serrent la ceinture? Est-ce que vous pensez changer votre approche par rapport à ça?
Comme énormément de familles canadiennes, on est allé rester chez des amis pour les vacances de Noël. Toutes les règles ont été suivies.
Merci.
Next question.
In New Brunswick recently, there's been a lot of rhetoric about gender-affirming care, and the Premier is making a lot of comments about potentially scaling that back. I'm wondering if you're worried about that rhetoric and whether you're worried the province will scale back gender-affirming care.
I think Canada is the best country in the world, in part because Canadians respect each other. And in Canada, people are free to be who they are, to love whom they love. It's something that our party and, quite frankly, millions of Canadians will always stand to defend. Unfortunately, we are seeing in certain parts of the country, in certain political parties, try to instrumentalize divisions or intolerance into political advantage. We're a party that will always stand with everyone, be there to defend people's rights to be who they are, and I think that's something that all Canadians expect of their governments. We're a government that will always stand up for people's rights.
Well, given the challenges that healthcare is facing across the country, and no surprise in New Brunswick, would you then scale back health transfers as you did with abortion should something come down the pipe?
It is part of the federal government's responsibility to ensure that health care is provided to all citizens in the right way. We've recently put on the table hundreds of billions of dollars to improve healthcare services for all Canadians. Indeed, part of what we're asking for is a greater level of transparency and accountability, not necessarily to the federal government, but to citizens about the results that are being delivered by the significant investments from all of our tax dollars into the healthcare systems across the country. People have a right to expect top quality healthcare, and the federal government will always be active in ensuring that people get it.
Next question.
Good morning. My question is about Robert Mailman and Walter Gillespie. These are two gentlemen who just were wrongfully convicted of murder. Your Justice Minister had a part of that starting. There's been some apologies offered. There has been some lukewarm response of a review, but there hasn't been much said about compensation. What can you say about compensation for these two gentlemen? Is it a priority, keeping in mind that these are older gentlemen and one has just been diagnosed with terminal cancer?
Obviously, we take this situation extremely seriously. We're going through the appropriate steps right now. I'm not going to comment more than that, but I can tell you that the Justice Minister is seized with this, and we will be looking at all different options.
Last question.
Hi, Mr. Prime Minister. I was wondering regarding South Africa's case against Israel. Will Canada abide by the findings of the ICJ?
I was very, very clear on this last week, and I'm happy to repeat it. Canada has always supported the international rules-based order and the structures around international law, including and especially the International Court of Justice. We have a direct engagement in 5 different cases before the ICJ right now because we believe in the work it does. At the same time, our support for the ICJ and its processes does not mean that we accept the premise of the case brought forward by South Africa, and we are watching carefully as all the steps unfold.
So what will Canada do in case ICJ finds that Israel did commit genocide?
I'm not going to comment on what could be an eventual finding by a process that we support as it unfolds. Okay. Je ne vais pas commenter sur des décisions qui pourraient être prises par la Cour de justice internationale avant qu'elles ne soient prises.
Okay, so a lot of questions around what's going to happen with small business. Let's talk about climate, because right now North America is in the middle of a cold snap, and one of the hardest hit areas has been Alberta, and which they are issuing rolling blackouts, and Daniel Smith has issued statements thanking Albertans for their attention to lowering their power consumption, and is it helping? And what is happening with the weather? What is happening with the resilience to infrastructure in our societies, that things aren't going as well as we thought, especially with the winter cold snaps. In our local area, that they've had trouble keeping the roads open because of the amount of snow that has been dumped, and that there have been issued warnings from the government of British Columbia to question, do you need to travel, or can whatever it is wait until the roads are completely clear and that we can get things back to normal because of the cold. So a lot of different things happening. Climate change isn't just about warming, it's about the jet streams that actually help keep our climate in a certain direction, and having our infrastructure that is built based on those same jet streams so that we have a predictable weather pattern. So, Florida governor, in a town hall meeting, he issued a bit of a warning around nominating Donald Trump again for president, and he's saying that simply put, the Republicans are going to lose, and it isn't seeming that Donald Trump is getting the warm reception that he thought he was going to get by running for president again. So people are remembering what happened right after he lost the last election, and how the riots happened in Washington, D.C., and the Capitol building was stormed. And what part did he actually play in that? So, just something to think about with that, especially in the United States with the Republicans. And on that front, that there apparently is a impending federal government shutdown if some deadlines aren't met by this Friday, which means that a lot of government employees will not get paid, and the military, along with that, and some other things. One of the bill being negotiated is aimed at sending aid to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, and the southern borders with Mexico, but efforts include changes to the border and immigration policy in particular has stalled progress for months. So, and why don't we hear what was said at a meeting in Manitoba around clean aviation fuel.
Thank you so much for joining us. Pleasure to be here. It's such a beautiful building and a wonderful new addition to the city of Winnipeg and to the airport region here. My name is Ben Carr. I'm the Member of Parliament for Winnipeg South Centre. Before we begin the formality of today's event, I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathered here on Treaty 1 territory, which is the traditional homelands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji Cree, and Dakota peoples, as well as the traditional homeland of the Red River Métis. I want to also begin by thanking the staff at the Royal Aviation Museum of Western Canada for having us here today, and looking forward to spending some time here in the building later on. We've got a number of special guests here that I would like to introduce. My friend and colleague, Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, who is our Minister of Energy and Natural Resources at the federal. Of course, to my right, Premier Wab Kinew of the province of Manitoba. Also, my colleagues from the province of Manitoba, Ministers Schmidt and Moses, who are here with us today. Also would like to acknowledge the presence of the Mayor of the City of Portage la Prairie, Sherilyn Knox, as well as Deputy Reeve Roy Tufford from the Municipality of Portage la Prairie. And to my left, Douglas Cole, President and CEO of Azure Sustainable Fuels Corporation, and Carr Landry from Canada's Infrastructure Bank. So I would like to turn the microphone over to Minister Wilkinson, who's going to kick us off with some information about why we're gathered here today. Jonathan?
Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue. C'est un plaisir d'être ici aujourd'hui. I grew up in Saskatoon, so not so different from a weather perspective to Winnipeg, and I must say it is always a great feeling to be back on the prairies. I would like to acknowledge all of the dignitaries, local, provincial, business leaders, Canada Infrastructure Bank, and certainly the new Premier of Manitoba, with whom I had the great pleasure of meeting this morning. As a member of a progressive federal government and as someone who worked very closely with former Saskatchewan Premier Roy Romanow, I certainly see a lot of common values and common interests on which we can and we will build. Je me réjouis de construire un partenariat solide et productif avec le nouveau gouvernement du Manitoba. We talk a lot these days about the issue of climate change. Climate change is altering our natural world in a myriad of harmful ways. Here in Manitoba, this past summer saw some of the worst hailstorms in the province's history, causing millions in property damage and decimating farmers' crops. In fact, as you folks will know very well, a single hailstorm in August was estimated to have caused $140 million in insurable losses. We also saw across this country a terrible season of forest fires. I represent a riding in British Columbia, and I think many of you will have seen the pictures from Kelowna that showed the devastation that these events are causing to many, many Canadians. While some politicians these days choose to deny or deflect or downplay such events, Canadians know the facts. Our planet is effectively burning up, and extreme weather is becoming more prevalent with each passing year, and climate change is the cause. Heureusement, nous avons ici au Manitoba un partenaire qui reconnaît cette importante réalité scientifique. The recent Manitoba throne speech underlined the fact that climate change is one of the greatest challenges of our time, one that requires real solutions. At the same time, climate change is also rapidly transforming the global economy and global finance in ways that are creating economic opportunities for those who approach the shift to a lower carbon world in a thoughtful, determined, and strategic manner. The global energy transformation is both an environmental imperative to protect the planet for future generations and an economic opportunity on the scale of the Industrial Revolution. Cette transformation est en cours et s'accélère. Last week's release of the global top 100 clean tech companies reaffirmed that Canada is punching well above its weight in key aspects of the rapidly emerging clean economy, with 13 Canadian companies making this year's list, the most of any country aside from the United States. La majorité des Canadiens sont effectivement préoccupés par le changement climatique, mais ils s'inquiètent également de leur situation économique et veulent être sûrs qu'eux-mêmes et leurs enfants auront de bons emplois et de bonnes opportunités économiques à l'avenir. I am here to tell you that for Canada to seize the extraordinary economic opportunities that can be enabled through the transition to a net zero economy, we must accept the scientific reality of climate change and ensure that it informs and shapes Canada's economic strategy going forward. What Canada needs at this moment in our history is a thoughtful and ambitious economic strategy that will create wealth and good jobs in every province and territory in this country. C'est un sujet sur lequel votre gouvernement fédéral se concentre depuis son Since 2015, your federal government has invested over $200 billion in the fight against climate change and in accelerating the development of a prosperous green economy, including $86 billion in last year's budget alone. And the world is taking notice. In just the last 3 years, we have seen more than $40 billion invested in almost 100 clean growth projects, and we're seeing this economic progress from coast to coast to coast. In Newfoundland, Brea Fuels is converting its refinery to renewable diesel. In Ontario, we are seeing massive investments in the entirety of the electric vehicle value chain. In Alberta, Dow recently announced its decision to proceed with a $12 billion net zero petrochemical facility, the first net zero petrochemical facility in the world. And here in Manitoba, we are seeing the success of New Flyers electric buses and increased activity relating to critical minerals. Les investissements tels que ceux soulignés, ainsi que les emplois et la prospérité qu'ils créeront ne sont pas le fruit du hasard. Ils sont rendus possibles par une approche globale qui comprend des réglementations clés, des incitations, des investissements et d'autres signaux politiques, y compris le prix sur la pollution par le carbone. It is up to us as a country to make smart choices. We can choose to lead by recognizing where the world is heading and aggressively pursuing major areas of economic opportunity. Or we can choose to bury our heads in the sand, pretend the world is not moving towards a cleaner, greener future, eroding our long-term competitiveness and our long-term prosperity. I call the first choice a green economic plan for the future, one that is thoughtful, one that is relevant, one that is strategic. And I call the second simply hoping for the best, taking a reckless gamble with the future of the planet and with Canada's current and future prosperity. This federal government has chosen the first path. Unfortunately, there are other federal politicians in this country who are seemingly choosing the second. In doing so, they are, as I say, taking a reckless gamble with the future of the planet and with Canada's prosperity. They would allow the planet to burn and the damage caused by climate change to accelerate. They would ensure Canada fails to seize the significant opportunities presented by the global energy transition, the billions of dollars in investments, and the hundreds of thousands of well-paying jobs to countries that are more thoughtful and more strategic. The new government in Manitoba, through its statements and its early actions, has demonstrated it intends to lead in the fight against climate change and in seizing economic opportunities. Manitoba has joined provinces including Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Quebec, Newfoundland, Labrador, Prince Edward Island, and BC in committing to a net zero grid by 2035, a goal the federal government shares and a goal that recognizes that the future is electric and that meeting our climate targets and competing in a rapidly decarbonizing global economy means strengthening our clean electricity advantage. In fact, we are already making progress together in this space with nearly $500 million federal investment announced just a few weeks ago in hydroelectric turbines and a new transmission network, strengthening Manitoba's already robust and almost entirely non-emitting grid. Le gouvernement fédéral et le nouveau gouvernement du Manitoba partagent également la conviction que la mise en place d'une économie propre ne peut et ne doit se faire que par le biais d'un engagement significatif et d'un partenariat actif avec les peuples autochtones. That is why we recently announced, and why the Premier and I discussed this morning, the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program that the federal government will soon be standing up. And perhaps most importantly, this Manitoba government understands that a collaborative approach is more productive than a combative one. My discussions with Minister Schmidt and Moses yesterday and with the Premier today were indeed productive and collaborative. And in the spirit of this collaborative approach, I am very pleased to announce that we are working together on another investment in Manitoba's clean economy. Today, the federal government is announcing that it will be investing $6.2 million for Azure Sustainable Fuels to conduct a front-end engineering design study for the planned sustainable aviation fuel facility near Portage la Prairie. This includes $5 million from Natural Resources Canada, my department, and $1.2 million from the Canada Infrastructure Bank. These funds will complement the Government of Manitoba's nearly $3 million investment in the project. L'installation de carburant aviation durable proposée par Azure produirait environ 1 milliard de litres de SAF chaque année, principalement à partir de matières premières canadiennes telles que les huiles de canola et de soja. It will create 1,500 construction jobs and approximately 150 direct, permanent, highly specialized jobs once in production. And its construction is projected to potentially bring $2 billion to Manitoba's economy. The establishment of a SAF facility would be yet another significant gain for Portage la Prairie, which has seen strong investment in business development and housing since 2017. L'installation proposée par Azure devrait permettre de réduire les émissions de CO2 d'environ 2,6 millions de tonnes sur une base annuelle, ce qui équivaut aux réductions d'émissions associées au retrait de la circulation de plus de 550 000 véhicules de tourisme. Azure's SAF facility is what success looks like in a rapidly decarbonizing global economy. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said earlier, we have a choice, and I would suggest that thoughtful people must conclude that we simply must choose to act thoughtfully, and indeed we must choose to have the courage and the foresight to lead. Today is yet another step along the path of climate and economic leadership, and I very much look forward to taking further steps with our partners in the Manitoba government in the months and years to come. Merci beaucoup.
Thanks very much, Minister Wilkinson. And I just want to take an opportunity before I invite the Premier up to speak to say that the working relationship between the provincial government in Manitoba since their election in October and the federal government has been outstanding. Every minister that has come into town, every one of my colleagues, all of those that I've spoken to, including River Heights MLA Mike Morose, who I met with yesterday, as well as the Premier and ministers from across the cabinet, have enjoyed a genuine relationship that is built on trust, it's built on mutual values, a progressive vision for the province of Manitoba and for Canada as a whole. And we have really enjoyed the last couple of months working together, and I think today is another example of a positive step forward. So with that, and with big thanks and commending to the Premier for his leadership and that of his team, I'd like to ask Premier Wab Kinew to come up and deliver remarks on the announcement today. Great. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thanks, Premier.
Yeah. Well, that's very kind, MP Carr, and of course, Minister Wilkinson. This is a very welcome announcement, and we're happy to be making an investment alongside your government. The folks at Azure and the Canada Infrastructure Bank, I think it's pretty amazing to see the sort of economic potential that's going to be unlocked here. And then to Mayor Knox and to the Deputy Reeve here, you know, Portage is an important hub in Manitoba's provincial framework, and we really look forward to continuing to grow the economic pie for your region and for the whole province. To my colleagues, Ministers Schmidt and Moses, this is all part of the plan, isn't it, right? Grow the economy, economic horse pulls the social cart. We'll be doing lots of great healthcare and education announcements based on the economic development potential that we help to realize. I'm very excited about the announcement that we're making here today, because at the end of the day, Manitoba is going to be a winner, economically speaking, in a net zero future. Our province has made the investment over the past 5 decades to have a low carbon electricity grid. We have a skilled workforce. We have, from critical minerals through advanced manufacturers and ports to bring goods to market, the entire supply chain for a net zero economy of the future. And the best part about it is that there is a long tradition here of putting blue-collar Manitobans to work building these sorts of projects. And so whether you're the finance person, the person putting the steel toes on in -50 weather, or the person who's going to work inside the plant in the future, there's a ton of economic potential that's going to be unlocked by furthering those investments in a zero emissions future across Canada and here in Manitoba. When our team was elected in the recent provincial election, there was a clear message set by Manitobans. Manitobans wanted a government that was going to bring people together. And not only bring people together from different walks of life and different regions of the province, but also just to have a government that was going to work together with other governments. And so we've extended that hand, offered a warm and hearty handshake to municipal leaders, to Indigenous leaders, and of course, to the federal government. Because at the end of the day, we're all working for you. And today's announcement, done jointly with various levels of leadership, is emblematic of that. And it's really important that we continue to deliver for you, the people of Manitoba, and for Canadians across this great country. And this investment today is a direct result of that willingness to work together. The idea that we're going to be able to connect the ag industry with sustainable aviation fuel opportunity, and that there'll be a cyclical opportunity there as well to feed back into future ag development, to do regional development, workforce development. This is a really smart investment, and we're very, very optimistic and excited to see this bear fruit. Level, joining with the announcement of funding Minister Wilkinson have brought forward here today. We know that good jobs are on the way for Manitobans. This is an investment in Manitoba, but I also hope Manitoba can act as a showcase for the rest of the country. Sometimes we're asking people in other jurisdictions, when we talk about green jobs, to engage in an active imagination. But here in Manitoba, for the last 50 years, everyone has known somebody who works in a green job. We know people who work for Manitoba Hydro and the subcontractors there. So if we can show the rest of the country that you can have good paying, middle-class jobs, blue-collar work by investing in a climate-friendly future, I think that's a positive contribution to our overall Canada-wide framework as well. So it is with great gratitude and humility that we're standing here with the many partners who are going to bring this forward. Again, we're talking about the early stage work of what is going to be a very, very exciting opportunity that we hope comes online in the very near future. So with a lot of humility and the willingness to continue the collaboration, our team's very proud to stand here today and to say that this investment in Azure and this investment in our province is a good move for Manitobans. Miigwech, merci. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Premier. And just to build on that, you know, every announcement builds. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had the Federal Agriculture Minister, Minister Lawrence MacAulay here, who made an announcement of upwards of $10 million toward investments in the canola industry here in Manitoba. And as the Premier said, it's these investments in biofuels like canola that build on top of the type of research and innovation that's taking place that's going to compound and continue to deliver results for Manitobans, both economically as well as the contribution that we have to play to the fight against the climate crisis. So I'd like to turn the microphone over now to Douglas Cole, who is going to provide remarks on behalf of his organization that's really at the heart of this wonderful investment that's being made here today. Douglas?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Minister Wilkinson, Premier Kinew, thank you very much for inviting Azure here today to be part of this very exciting announcement. I'd like to start by recognizing the Indigenous people that have walked on this land long before I was ever here. And Azure has been engaging with various Indigenous groups across the country in the areas we're working in since the inception of the company. And I'd like to acknowledge the support that we've received from these Indigenous groups regarding our intent to help construct, to be a leader in this energy transition, and to construct the first facility in Canada that would be focused on producing sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, or SAF as we call it. We at Azure are honored to receive funding from the Clean Fuels Fund, from the Government of Manitoba, and from the Canada Infrastructure Bank. I believe the support from Canada validates our vision to create a made-in-Canada solution to reduce carbon emissions globally by utilizing Canada's resources and skills. The funding received from Natural Resources Canada's Clean Fuel Fund along with funding received from Manitoba's Sustainable Agriculture Fund and from the Canada Infrastructure Bank, means Azure is now fully funded to complete the front-end engineering design or FEED stage of this project. And that's a very important milestone in any project development. With this funding, we anticipate completing the FEED study for all 3 of our Canadian sites by the end of this calendar year, with a view to making a final investment decision in early 2025, which would enable production in 2027. Undertaking a project of this magnitude requires an exceptionally broad set of skills. And Azure has partnered with industry leaders across the value chain, from technology, engineering, logistics, finance, just to name a few, to ensure that the resources needed are brought together to ensure a successful project. And I'm very proud today to be now partnering with the Government of Canada and with, as we announced earlier, the Government of Manitoba and the Canada Infrastructure Bank to advance this project. We believe at Azure, we believe that Canadian SAF facility is truly a win-win-win scenario for our aviation industry, for our agricultural industry, and for all Canadians. As the SAF produced from this facility will be able to reduce carbon emissions by roughly 80%. And as Minister Wilkinson said, that's for our facility, that would be the equivalent of taking about 500,000 cars off the road every year. It's quite a way to look at it. This will create a long-term stable market for Canada's canola products, for canola oil. And it reduces our reliance on volatile international markets. And it will support our Canadian airline industry to doing their part to reach Canada's goals and the world's climate goals. And these benefits, along with the employment impact and the GDP impact that you referred to, I think are truly a win for Canada. Minister Wilkinson, Premier Kinew, Mr. Landry, your commitment and your support to these innovative initiatives really serves as a testament to your shared vision for a decarbonized Canada. These investments will enable us to lay the groundwork for Canada to be a leader in the energy transition and create a transformative change to our country. So on behalf of all of the team at Azure, I'd like to thank Natural Resources Canada, the Province of Manitoba, and the Canada Infrastructure Bank for partnering with us to support our vision. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Douglas. So they're going to conclude the formal part of the announcement here today. I do see we have some members of the press that are present, so we will begin the media Q&A portion. If we just ask, we probably have time for a question and a follow-up question. So for those from the media here today, if you could just step forward to the microphone, identify which outlet you're representing, please, and who the question is directed to.
There, Global News, and I have one question for the Premier and one question for the Minister, and both are carbon tax related. So I don't know who would like to answer first. Go ahead, John. All right. More provinces and territories keep saying they want to see the carbon change, and they frame it around the cost of living. Rebates, people feel it's adding pressure to the cost of living. Is this a sign Ottawa needs to adjust plans before the next price increase in April?
So I would say that before I was Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, I was the Minister of the Environment, and I'm quite familiar with how the carbon price works. The carbon price is one tool in the context of a broad approach to addressing the climate emergency. It is not the silver bullet. It is part of a broad range of things, including regulatory tools, including investments, et cetera. The design of the price on pollution was developed in such a way that we actually directly addressed the issue of affordability through carbon rebates in provinces that use the federal system. And those rebates for 80% of Canadian families are more than what they pay through direct and indirect costs. And in fact, there was a study done recently by Trevor Toombs at the University of Calgary, and another one that was referenced by University of Regina, an economist, that actually showed that the vast majority of folks that live in those two provinces, which have been the most vocal on this issue, get more money back. I think the most recent study shows that 96% of Canadians who actually earn less than, I believe it's $70,000 a year as a family income, get more money back. So getting rid of the price on pollution actually would work in reverse order to affordability. It would actually make poorer people poorer. Because they receive more money than they actually pay. It would also remove the incentive people have to address efficiency and to actually reduce their carbon emissions. So the Government of Canada will continue to communicate a number of those issues. We will continue to move forward with a plan that actually does address affordability, but does so in a manner that that also helps us with the climate issue. I would also say to some provinces and territories, if they actually have an interest in designing their own plan that would reach the criteria that are established by the federal government, they are welcome to do that. And provinces like British Columbia have their own price on pollution that is different than the federal government's. So does Quebec, so do a number of other provinces.
Thank you. Sure. So you've mentioned before wanting Ottawa to take another look at the carbon tax in Manitoba. Are you hoping to see the federal backstop the price change, or do some other provinces, or do what some other provinces have done and bring in a provincial pricing plan that incorporates the federal price minimums?
You know, today's announcement is about working together. And we're talking about cleaner aviation fuel. I hope that this investment moves forward in the way that we're all envisioning it here, because when I think about leaving a safe, clean, and healthy environment for future generations of Manitobans, I want them to be able to jump on the plane and go somewhere warm as part of that future. And so this investment today, I think, is really paving the way for Manitoba to once again be a leader in a zero emissions, net zero future, whatever you want to call it. I call it a safe, clean, healthy environment for future generations. Our government, as part of that idea of working together, we're doing the things within our purview that we can to help you. That's why on January 1st of this year, our team was very proud to remove the fuel tax on gasoline and diesel. That helps you right now. We know that people are struggling. And I was very proud on January 1st to drive west with my family, and we saw the price of gas dropping in West Winnipeg, in Portage la Prairie, in Brandon, in Virden, and really across the province. So there are things we can do right now to help during this affordability challenge, while also being consistent with a long-term fight against climate change. And I've been very clear. I think that Manitoba has a very strong case to make that the carbon price could be revisited here in our province. And we're going to be having those conversations with the same sort of constructive, collaborative tone that we're bringing forward this exciting investment today, which is to say that good things happen for you, the people of Manitoba, and across Canada when your leaders work together.
CBC for Minister Wilkinson. Will the Greener Homes grant program still accept applications past March?
So the Greener Homes program has been an enormously popular program. It was initially set up to run for 7 years, probably the first 4 or so years of that for intake, and then the rest of it to complete all of the retrofits. It has been so popular that it has used up a lot of the available funds earlier than we had anticipated. As is the case with any budgetary allocation, as you use up your budgetary allocation, you go back and have conversations within the government and with the Department of Finance about how we actually address that going forward. Building efficiency is very important. The Government of Canada recognizes that, and certainly we are having those conversations as we speak with the Department of Finance, and we will have answers for you associated with the next budget.
For the Premier, different topic.
Yeah.
What is your concern that former Cabinet Minister Cliff Cullen approached your transition team asking for a meeting between Faisal Samji and Minister Moses and Minister Schmidt?
So without confirming the specifics of what you're saying there, because I'm not sure all of that is the same information that I have, so let's follow up offline.
That information comes directly from your office, but okay.
Yeah. So we can go back and forth on the disputing of assertions if you like. But what I would say, the overall concern that we have is when you cast a vote in an election, the most sacred of values is at play that we hold dear in our society. That the people get to choose who they're going to have as a government. And in a case like this one, where it appears that the caretaker convention was violated, probably on a few occasions, it casts that value into doubt, because you have folks who are no longer carrying the mandate from the people of Manitoba, attempting to make decisions about the future of government policy. So that's a very serious democratic ideal and public policy concern that needs to be addressed, and so that's why members of our team have set those wheels in motion. When it comes to the former Minister of Finance and the former Deputy Premier and his conduct, I think that the concern that our team has is that it appears as though there is a pattern of behavior on the part of the outgoing government. And if nothing else, if there were so many people as part of that former government pushing in a certain direction on a project that was supposed to be the subject of an independent environmental approval process and decision-making process, it does bring into question the validity of that approval process. And so operationally, in terms of when the rubber meets the road, what does that mean for our administration? It means that we're now taking the time to review the steps towards the potential approval of that process. Our team is very committed to ensuring that critical minerals are developed as an industry here in Manitoba, but the best way for us to capitalize on that opportunity is to develop those critical minerals in the right way, which means Manitoba wins as an economy when we can bring minerals to market and say, we're bringing these out of the ground with the highest environmental standards, highest labor standards, best respect for human rights of any jurisdiction in the world. But where certain actions appear to cast that value proposition into doubt, our team owes it to the people of Manitoba to take the time to get it right. And so that's what we're doing.
Éric Duhamel, Radio-Canada, Manitoba. Monsieur Kinew, peut-être revenir sur les principaux points en français, notamment au niveau des retombées pour les Manitobains et de la structure de financement, peut-être.
Oui, bien, aujourd'hui, nous avons annoncé les contributions du gouvernement fédéral et puis le Banque d'infrastructure canadien. Puis, c'était aussi 3 millions de dollars à peu près du niveau provincial. Alors, je suis très content d'être ici avec le ministre Wilkinson et puis avec le député Carr, puis mes collègues et puis les autres qui viennent de Portage et puis de Azure et puis du CEBA. Pour nous, c'est un investissement, une opportunité très excitante parce que notre province avait toujours construit une économie verte, une économie qui pourrait trouver beaucoup de succès dans ce moment économique où tout le monde, tout partout sur la planète, veut trouver des façons d'améliorer comment est-ce qu'il fonctionne envers le changement climatique. Alors, oui, j'espère que mes gars pourront prendre des avions puis aller quelque part chaud dans l'hiver, mais si on pourrait contribuer à cette future, cet avenir, dans une façon qui créera plus d'opportunités économiques à Portage, ici en Manitoba, ben ça, c'est un investissement qu'on doit faire ici dans le Manitoba.
Et quelle est la principale différence avec l'annonce qui avait été faite en juin dernier par votre prédécesseur?
Ce qu'on fait maintenant, c'est de confirmer la direction de notre gouvernement comme une nouvelle administration, parce qu'il y avait l'élection. Puis, en même temps, le gouvernement fédéral est ici pour faire leur annonce. Et puis finalement, la banque. Ça, c'est leur premier investissement de ce niveau. Alors, c'est vraiment l'opportunité de rassembler tout le monde pour confirmer que cette opportunité avec Azure est quelque chose de vraiment excitant et que nous voulons collaborer ensemble pour livrer pour tout le monde dans la province.
Merci.
Merci à toi.
Hello. With the Winnipeg Free Press, I also have a question for Premier Kinew. The CEBA loans forgivable portion deadline is coming up. It's not being pushed back. I'm wondering, what do you think about that?
Adrian, eh? Sorry.
So what do you think about that? And is the government going to do anything for businesses that can't or have not paid back their CEBA loans just yet?
It's a big challenge for a lot of businesses out there. You know, we've heard the stories in our constituencies about business owners in a very tough situation. That's why my colleagues, the other premiers, and I have gone on record in asking the federal government for some consideration here. And so I understand that my colleague, the Minister of Finance, Adrian Sala, is also speaking to your organization today. And so in addition to the work that we do at the premierial level, I know the finance ministers are engaging on this as well, because small businesses have had it tough these past few years. And while we want to make the big bets on a clean economy in the future, we also know that it's those small businesses, medium-sized businesses, that are the job creators for so many working Manitobans. Come together to find an opportunity to ensure that they're able to make it through. And I think that's something that we'd all want to work together on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I also have a question for Mr.
Okay, so we're still having impending issues with the Hamas and Israel, as we know all of the massive devastation, and you're going to hear a 4-minute statement from the United Nations about why the Gaza Strip is the most dangerous place on the planet to be a child. So this is a report from the CNN about Israel and Hamas have agreed to agreed on a deal that will see medicine delivered to hostages in exchange for delivery of humanitarian aid to Palestinian citizens. Qatar said on Tuesday the relatives of more than 100 remaining hostages believed to be alive in Gaza are calling for medications to be passed on to their loved ones. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum, an advocacy group for victims' families, said each new day in captivity endangers the lives of their loved ones, and at least 1/3 of Israeli hostages have chronic illnesses, require medications. The forum said in a report released last week, adding others suffer from illness related to harsh captivity conditions. The medication aid leave Dona today and Qatar, but it is unclear how it will reach Gaza. So it is an area that, of course, we've heard the trials again and charges against Israel on genocide, and most of that is based on the fact that getting humanitarian aid into Gaza is difficult, if not nearly impossible, because of the conditions that Israel has created, and that there has to be a system. If they're creating safe zones, that they have to ensure that a few things are possible, such as sanitation, medication, food, and water, which don't seem to be possible in those safe zones in Gaza, so that people can stay out of harm's way. And also the targeting and shelling of hospitals and medical centers, which, according to the rules of war, is not legal. So Genocide? Maybe, maybe not. War crimes? Look more than likely if you're targeting civilian sites like hospitals and medication centers and you have safe zones that are not adequate to sustain human life. So let's listen to that 4-minute statement from the United Nations representative from UNICEF about why it's so dangerous to be a child in Gaza.
Remains the most dangerous place in the world to be a child, and day after day that brutal reality is reinforced. Over the past 48 hours, the largest remaining fully functional hospital in Gaza has been shelled twice. Now that hospital, Al Nasser in Khan Yunis, was a hospital I was at on a daily basis. It not only shelters large numbers of children who have brutal wounds of war, but it also shelters hundreds and hundreds of women and children from across the Gaza Strip who are simply seeking safety. Over the weekend, UNICEF had shared the story of a 13-year-old girl called Dina. Now, when Dina's house in Khan Yunis was completely destroyed, her mother and her father and her 2 brothers were killed. Dina survived, but she was badly injured and had her leg amputated. Somehow, Dina had not lost hope. She told us about her dreams, about being a lawyer. Her quote was, "I feel injustice. When I grow up, I'll become a lawyer so I can enjoy my rights and the rights of all children." Dina was one of those killed in the shelling of Nasser Hospital on Sunday, the day after she shared her story of hope. So where do children and families go? They're not safe in hospitals, they're not safe in shelters, and they're certainly not safe in so-called safe zones. So let me just spend a minute explaining why these safe zones are anything but. Parties to the conflict have an obligation to take all feasible precautions to protect the civilian population. In this case, one of those precautions they've chosen to take is evacuation, or moving to so-called safe zones. Now, as the United Nations said a month ago, these zones cannot be humanitarian when they're unilaterally declared. In addition, under international law, when you evacuate people to a place, you must have sufficient resources for survival. Medical facilities, food and water. It sounds very obvious. We have not even heard lip service paid to medical facilities, food and water. So that is that these so-called safe zones are only safe when they're not only free from bombardment, but when those conditions, food, water, medicine and shelter, are met. However, under the current besieged conditions, adequate supplies for such zones are impossible. I saw this for myself. They are tiny patches of barren land, or they're street corners in neighbourhoods, or they're half-built buildings with no water, no facilities, no shelter from the cold and now the rain, and certainly no sanitation. Currently in Gaza, there is a toilet for around every 700 people. You can imagine the 3 or 4 hours that means for an adolescent girl. One toilet for 700 people. Relocate people from these shelters to the so-called safe zones, and we're talking about tens of thousands of people resorting to buckets or open defecation. And so without water, without sanitation, nor shelter, these so-called safe zones have become zones of disease. Diarrhea cases in children are now above 100,000. Acute respiratory illness in civilians above 150,000. Both these numbers will be gross undercounts of the woeful reality. Malnutrition is also soaring in Gaza's children, therefore things like diarrheal diseases are now deadly. Consider this, more than 130,000 of Gaza's most vulnerable children, that is newborns up to 2 years of age, are not receiving the critical life-saving breastfeeding or age-appropriate complementary feeding that they absolutely require. So that's our scenario. Without sufficient safe water, food and sanitation that only a humanitarian ceasefire would bring, child deaths due to disease could well surpass those already killed in bombardments. Now, parents are painfully aware that hospitals are not an option for their sick child, both because hospitals are, as we've mentioned, being hit, and because hospitals are utterly overwhelmed with children and citizens with ghastly wounds of war. As a parent who I became friends with, who sent me a message just a couple of days ago, of a critically sick little child told me, quote, Our situation is pure misery. I'm overwhelmed. My son is very sick. I told my wife we have to lower expectations. All we have is hope. I don't know if we will make it through this. Please tell the world. Now, as we speak, the delivery of aid is a matter of life and death for children in Gaza, and the conditions to provide that aid are simply not being met. An immediate and long-lasting humanitarian ceasefire is the only way to end the killing and injuring of children and ensure the urgent delivery of desperately needed life-saving aid so we do not see thousands of children die from disease. Thank you.
Thank you for listening today to Policy and Rights. And we'd like to ask you this time to subscribe to us and find that subscribe button wherever it may be sitting on your screen. Also, let's think about what it means to be human, as opposed to one of the things that was brought up in the genocide trial, a human animal. What does that really mean? And what does that mean if we want equality for everyone around the world, so that we are uplifting people into the same status as those who have privilege? Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.